Welcome back to our Sunday Truth Talk. My name is Jona Bryndis. I'm a professional energy healer, and today I want to talk to you about high vibe nutrition, high vibe diet especially. And for those of you who came here earlier, I apologize. We had an issue here with the live stream. It didn't take on Facebook, so we had a very vivid discussion on Instagram, and I'm going to recite some of those questions that came on Instagram, and I hope that I can answer your questions here in regards to what high vibe nutrition is, a subject that keeps coming up for us energetically sensitives, empaths, and awakening people. So let's look at the fundamentals of a high vibe nutrition here real quick. What is high vibe at all? Obviously, we are referring to something that has to do with our energies. And when we look at our energies, we're also dealing not just with the seen, we're also dealing with the unseen. What are seen energies? We refer to those as the ones that we can see with our see, feel, touch, and so forth with our five senses, and the unseen ones, such as more spiritual, such as karmic or etheric energies that we can perceive. We perceive them with senses that we all have as well, but that some of us are not as trained in to deal with or to even be aware of. And so when we refer to vibes or vibrations, we're referring to this sort of conglomerate of unexplainable things. All right. While I personally, the word energies, I don't actually like the word energy. It's a very sort of physical term, but I guess that's what our common lingo here has agreed upon. So high vibrations as opposed to low vibrations then are the kind of energies that make us feel energetic, that make us feel good. And this can refer to physical, this can refer to emotional, and this can also refer to mental aspects of our well-being, meaning how we feel about ourselves, how we see ourselves, how others perceive us, how well we are able to communicate who we are, express what we want, express our needs, and so forth. So it also affects our communication. And while these things are seemingly in the scene, 85% or even more are actually happening in the unseen. Those are the unseen energetic aspects of human interaction, and we are all kind of aware of it, but we're not really sure how to change this. Now, when it comes to what we ingest, and here I want to make the first distinction for you in regards to nutrition, all right? I don't just want to look at foods as nutrition. I want to first and foremost look at everything that we ingest, all right? And this means the people, the places, the energies, the emotions, seen or unseen, everything that we let in, okay? Everything that we let in determines the quality of our life, how we perceive ourselves, and with it the world we are in. And it determines obviously how we feel like we can interact with the world, or how well we can actually bring this to the world. And therefore everything that we ingest plays a big role in how this interaction here with the world, our energies, outer energies, inner and outer world, how this matches up. All right. And the biggest part here when it comes to high vibe nutrition or high vibe lifestyle, that where we are looking for the optimal expression, the optimal feeling about ourselves, the optimal ways of living for us individually. The first thing, of course, is to recognize that this is an individual process. So this isn't something that is, that one fits for all. This is very individual and depends on many, many different aspects of our lives, our goal setting for one, our circumstances, and some of our upbringing and so forth. So when we look at high vibes, we also need to look at what it relates to. So it's always relative to where we are. Yeah, somebody who has lived a life in depression can experience a life where, just smaller changes already, affected the depression into no longer being depressed as higher vibe relative to what this person felt before. But when I'm looking at, high vibe stuff here with you, and we've already found out that this is a subject that is so big that we're going to have to do this in 2 truth talks. And today we're only going to illuminate the dietary aspect of that as well as we can. We have to look at many different aspects of that. All right, it is not just what we eat or what we put in, it's also how we feel about what we're putting in and where we're getting it from, and the timing and the quality and the balance of it. And so you can see it's very, very complex already. Now, from those of you who are here right now, I would love to know what you guys have already experienced in your own life as those times where it's easy for you to live according to, say, high vibe, whatever you understand as higher vibe traditions or, sort of values, and when it's more difficult for you to do this. In the Instagram chat that we had just a few minutes ago, most people agreed that when we are stressed out, when we are in a place of already somewhat of a low energy, it is a lot harder for us to remember all these things. And this is here, the part that I want to stress out for you, that it doesn't matter actually how much you know. All right, it matters how well you can, really tune in to your own energy and trust in it rather than what you know, because we all know what happens when we are low. All our knowing goes out the window. So just understanding these things from an intellectual point of view is not enough. It surely does help, though. If I look at my own career here, I wasn't always an energy healer. I actually started out as a chemist. So my parts of my formal education in my early years was in chemistry and then in computer science, 2 disciplines that have nothing to do with energy healing, so it seems. But for the last 20 years, I've educated myself in spiritual psychology and spiritual counseling, and here I found basically the missing link of all these things that I tried to find in the physical or chemical view, or in programming and finding patterns and improving things. And that is that it's not enough to just look at one particular aspect of it. So the intellectual understanding of it is just one tiny little part. We as humans are much more complex than that. We are not just cells or chemical processes. We're not just programs and patterns. No, we are highly intelligent and highly complex energetic systems that depend on, or not depend, but that are influenced on many different factors in our life, some of which are seen and some of which are unseen, as we've already discussed. So to come to a place where we can actually make choices and learn how to integrate all of this has to do with what we use as our measuring tool, what we use, to even feel what we need or what is good for us and whatnot. And that is the part here that is really the tricky part for all of us. So in this Sunday Truth Talk here, I want to talk to you about what is actually needed to feel this, and how, by communicating, by talking about it, as we are doing right now, how we can better implement this in our life. In other words, how we can use the knowledge about foods and other things that we ingest to up our energy when we are low. But also how to see that, some of the things that we do ingest, how they lower our energy. So you see there's a 2-part process here. One is eliminating the things that lower our energy, and the other one is upping the things that can support, that can empower us. And the reason why this is such a big subject today, and yes, I see you. Thank you for sending me hearts, and thank you for thanking me. All right, I appreciate you here. This is supposed to be interactive. It's after this slight talking part here for my monologuing. I really want you guys to ask questions. In fact, I want you to ask questions at any time. So please feel free here to interject and type your questions. I've received quite a bit of questions up front that I want to weave in. And there were also lots of questions in the Instagram that we had now an hour ago that I want to bring back up here to inspire you guys to ask more questions. But when it comes to this ability to discern what is good for us and what isn't, we live in very auspicious times right now, because we've never had so much information available to us. And you know, I come from a time where I had to pay $500 for a textbook, all right, when I was in college. So today we have all this information out here available at our fingertips, but it seems that the more information is there, the less this information is actually being quality controlled. And so the overall, I guess, statistics is that only 5% of the information circulating on the internet, including news, obviously, is true, and the rest of it is untrue, or like a mixture of truth and falsehood. So the reason why I call these times auspicious for us is because, as you know, we are having all this information and everything being in real time, it seems like our ability to discern truth and our ability to discern the source of that information becomes somewhat more difficult, and this is really what we are seeing in our collective right now here, as you know, all these things are being uncovered, you know, like how businesses are made, corruption, you know, all these kind of things. We kind of always knew that they were there, but now, as this is all coming forward, and as you know, there's more truth really in at least so it seems needed, okay, to solve these bigger problems that are in our societies. All right, we are right now witnessing more or less the collapse of the old system, and so these years here, the end of 2019 and 2020, are extremely important years in this transformation into a society that is developing a higher consciousness level. So talking about nutrition is just as important as talking about politics or talking about energy healing, you know, in a spiritual sense, the spiritual awakening, as well as you know, pollution or environmental problems, as well as you know, problems in relationships and so forth. They are all part of the package from our perspective as individual human. That is a composition of these physical, emotional, mental, social, spiritual, and etheric or energetic energies. All right, all these things are factors in, you know, that determine the way we feel and you know, the energy that we have available. So without going into conspiracy theories, because there's a lot of theories out there what is actually being done to our energy, let's just put those aside here. The main thing is with this increased level of consciousness is that we have to step up into this active self-mastery, into this active self-healing. We have to step up into really understanding then what we let in or what we put out is part of the package, okay, of the larger package as well, the collective as well. So right now, where everything feels kind of uncertain and what triggers a lot of fear of unknown in us, you know, a lot of people run around, you know, scared or angry at what is going on, and you can tell, you don't have to be an empath, how this is influencing our overall energy levels as humans interacting with another. So if we are one of those who actually want truth and who want to implement a, a, a lifestyle, okay, that is based on what is best for myself and the collective, all right, we're gonna first have to look at some of those physical components. This is the densest aspect of our 3D being, all right, and therefore the one that where we run into the biggest problems, okay, so be it ailments, be it diseases, be it sort of physical impairments, and one of the pillars of our physical well-being is diet, is the foods that we ingest, all right? So just looking at this part right now, but from an integrative point of view, from the point of view of what these different foods provide, for us as an energetic system, as a holistic system, not just on a biological level or metabolic level, but what they provide for us as energies that we ingest. I would like to go through the principles of a high vibe nutrition with you right now. I keep on wanting to say high vibe diet, but it's really not just a diet. It's more, the principles of high vibe nutrition altogether. All right, so the first thing, the first principle here that is, so important, that if you don't integrate this into your daily lifestyle, you don't actually have to spend a lot of time on thinking about the foods that you eat. And I'm saying this a bit provocatively because it's so underrated that it's actually, sad. The principle number one is hydration, is drinking enough water. And this is something that most people right here, already forget. If we don't drink enough water, none of what we ingest, and this is, applies not just to the foods that we ingest, but also to the thoughts and the emotions and unseen energies that we ingest, cannot be metabolized correctly. And when something cannot be metabolized correctly, it means it either gets stuck or it produces some kind of emergency. It requires our body to cope with it, and anything that we put into our body that the body needs to cope with, or our energy system altogether needs to cope with, means that there's stress. Okay, so the higher the stress levels, the higher sort of the susceptibility to certain ailments, or our immune system not working properly, or us not being able to fully express ourselves. Those things they all belong together. And if we don't drink enough water, energy, nutrition, blood, whatever on whatever level you want to call it, cannot be transported correctly. All right, therefore hydration, your hydration level plays a major role in pretty much everything, guys. I mean, we've seen this here as energy healers over and over again. The number one leader for chronic depression and anxiety is dehydration. It's not the only factor, but it is, the big factor. So if you just remember this now, if you just start drinking more water, okay, this is already going to up the quality of your life. This is already going to up your vibes, all right? What kind of water is a good question. I don't actually recommend to drink these too much of these specialty waters, because enough water is actually for a sort of average grown person, anywhere between 50 and 100 kilos, somewhere between 2 and 3 liters. So in American terms, like a gallon of water a day. But that's only if you're not, engaging in strenuous exercise or live in Florida like I do, where you require more water just through at the environment. If you live in high altitude, for instance, same thing. You require more water just for your body to actually deal with the climate conditions that you're in. So we're looking at a gallon of water, and if you are, all, up for alkaline water or ionized water or specialty water from, places from all over the world, the problem is that this isn't practical. It gets too expensive, and then it can inhibit you. All right, it can reduce the amount of water that you drink just because you simply can't afford it. Other aspects are, for instance, that tap water in the Western world is actually not that bad. I recommend to filter the tap water. So you want to take the fluoride and the fluorides and the chlorides out. But you want to have all the minerals in there that are coming with the water. And so if you have a sort of medium grade water filtration system in your house, that's actually more effective than buying bottled waters. Why? Because in bottled water you have a lot of contaminants through the plastic, microplastics and so forth, but also the contaminants, the chemicals that are being used to clean, to produce the water bottles. And last but not least, of course, you're creating a lot of trash if you're drinking a gallon of water a day, so probably the most harmonious and most balanced way of drinking water is, like I've mentioned, with a good water filtration in the house, or, if you can afford it, like a sort of a 5-gallon water delivery or something like that, where you have plenty of water available to you. Another recommendation is that you only use big containers to drink water. If you drink these tiny little water bottles, it feels like you're drinking a lot. But like myself, I have these reused almond milk bottles that I use for water. You can put them into your dishwasher, and they hold 1 liter. So 1 liter bottles or 1.5 liter bottles, they would be your preferred choice, because it gives you a little overview. So fill up, the water bottles that you need for the day, 2 or 3, depending on the size, so that you get all the water in that you need. That would be my suggestion there. When it comes to, and yes, you're going to have to go to the bathroom more often. This is actually a very healthy sign. It shows that, everything goes through your system, that your kidneys are working properly, and it's, like a consistent flow that you are producing. Now your body can actually, transport whatever it needs to transport throughout your system correctly. So the second principle of high vibe nutrition is to stay away from packaged and processed foods. This is a general tip, and all these things are not new that I'm showing you here today, but I just want to summarize them for you and also bring them in context with energies. All right, processing foods, whether it be in the smaller sense here that we do this at home through cooking and baking, or freezing, is one thing, but another thing is when you buy products that are processed, in big facilities and so forth, that are mass produced. The amount of chemicals that are being used there just to maintain and preserve the shelf life. I don't know if you know this, but the average shelf life that these packaged foods have is supposed to be 2 years. And so, just to produce something like this, all right, you're going to have to put a lot of chemicals in there. And many of these chemicals have shown to be contaminants, which means that they're sort of anti-supportive for us, all right. They may not be toxic per definition, poisonous, but some of which are actually, and I'll give you a list here of those that are. But they compound, okay? So over time, they add up in your system, and they lower the vibration of your system, because it's another thing your system got to eat with. Now, the other component of that is that the nutrient content of those processed foods is very low, and often not even sufficient. So we may have enough calories, we may get enough carbs and proteins and fats even, but we still lacking nutrition. All right, it's not nourishing enough, and that is something here that, from an energetic point of view, becomes the much bigger question, namely, what is the quality, what is the nourishing quality of what I eat. And packaged and processed foods, guys, I mean, obviously there's gradients of that, but they don't really provide a lot of nutrition. And why is that? Because the nutrients we need, okay, besides, sorry for the siren here in the background, I'm just letting this go by. The nutrients we need to feel good and to feel nourished are actually not in this group of macronutrients, which is the carbs, the proteins, and the fats. They are actually found in the micronutrients. That's the minerals, the vitamins, the enzymes, and these what chemists call ceuticals. All right, the nutraceuticals in there, and these can primarily be found in live foods, all right, in raw foods. And this then leads to the third principle of a healthy nutrition, and that is to eat as much raw and raw fruits and vegetables as we can, and not so much to follow a certain school or being a raw diet fan or a vegan or anything like that, but for a very simple reason, namely that these foods that are alive, they also contain more life. They contain more life energy. They contain more energy. On a chemical level, this is then confirmed through the higher levels of micronutrients and phytochemicals, which are the nutrients that are found in fruits and vegetables, are extremely nutrient dense. They're extremely potent. They're extremely powerful. And yes, many of you also know this, are healing. So plants carry a lot of healing components. And this is the piece here that you really, really need to know. In nature, in a fruit or in a vegetable, the way these healing compounds come is in a very, very complex composition of like 10,000 or 20,000 different kinds of nutrients, most of which science, yes, that is absolutely true, don't even know or doesn't even know what they do and what they're for. They're coming in such small amounts, in micro levels, all right, but they somehow play into the efficiency of this, whatever compound you're looking at. Let's say vitamin C. Everybody knows vitamin C, ascorbic acid. All right, the vitamin C in an apple, all right, might on a quantitative level only be 100 milligrams, but when you eat it, it unfolds its potency 10, 100, 1,000 times. So the actual measurable vitamin C absorbed in the physical body through eating an apple is 10,000 milligrams. So you see what I'm saying here is that we can't just look at the numbers. We can't just look at the letters. We also have to look at the composition. We have to look at the sort of holistic balance that they come in. And this is why staying away from packaged foods or processed foods is and eating more raw fruits and vegetables is not a nutrition school, guys. This is not a fab thing. This has to do with the nutrients, the good vibes coming in. So if we cut ourselves off from good vibes coming in, not only is our system then in a state of malnourishment from a micronutrient level, but we also are less equipped to deal with negative impulses, or negative energies or contaminants that are coming in. And this is then the principle number 4, and that is obviously avoiding contaminants, food additives, and household toxins. All right, to reduce the amount that is pushing at us. Okay, that is coming in through things that we cannot control. All right, there's a lot of things we cannot control, but some of which we can, and that is in our food choices. You want to completely and 100% avoid any MSGs, any artificial sugars, and any food colorants, period, because they are extremely toxic to your system. And of course, we have toxins or poisons in our household items, detergents, and so forth, cleaners, that you may think that your country, is responsible and only allows the things that are not harmful, but it's not the case. So if I look at just pesticides and herbicides, I look at mosquito sprays, or floor cleaners and so forth. Guys, there is a lot of stuff in there depending on the country that you live in. Here in the United States, it was shocking to me when I moved here how much of the stuff that has been banned in the UA for 20-30 years already is still allowed. Okay, so do not think that just because it's a favorite or popular brand, all right, that this is all taken care of. On the contrary. All right, the reason why some of these products, cleaners and so forth, work so well is because they have things in there, that are extremely potent. And the only question is, how potent are they? Well, they clean things out in you too. They kill things in you as well. So it's a combination of, sort of looking at what you need, obviously. So I learned my lesson here in Florida the first couple of years, trying to stay away from all pesticides and herbicides and so forth. And I went through like pretty much every infestation in my house that you can experience, because some of those you have to use here. But these compromises that you make, they have to stay in a balance that you can control. All right, so you have to become more aware of what you let in and what you surround yourselves with. You can avoid aluminum in deodorants, you can avoid fluorides in toothpaste and so forth. There's many things that you can choose from, many products, and I would strongly suggest that you look at some of these already known contaminants, to lower the toxic load. Okay, toxic load is a word that comes, or that reminds us on the compounding aspect here, namely that it all adds up. Okay, so if we want to maintain high vibes, all right, we also we need to cut out the things that lower our vibes and increase our body's own self-healing and self-correction, in the sense that it can fight against those things that we have to put in, just through living in an industrialized age, looking at a computer all day long, having a cell phone in your pocket, and being surrounded, by all kinds of building materials and so forth that emit toxins. Okay, those are things you cannot avoid, but you can become more conscientious about it, and you need to make more educated choices there. So it's not just enough to cut out the bad stuff, because trust me, as a chemist, I can tell you that there is more bad stuff than you think there is. Am I trying to make you neurotic about this? No, on the contrary, I want to teach you here with this truth talk what these things are that you can do, and that is the other side of it, of avoiding things, is to actually improve the quality of your own system, so that it can deal with things better. And always think in terms of balance and harmony. Okay, so there are some things such as sugar, for instance. We had a very vivid discussion here on Instagram about sugars. One of the contaminants in our processed foods that we can buy in the supermarkets is sugar, for instance. And sugar is not just a problem in terms of emotional regulation and so forth, but sugar is a very potent neurotoxin, all right? It's a toxin for our nerves. And while it feels good for a little bit, it actually leads our system to do certain things, to crave for certain things, and then to engage in especially addictive behavior. So there is an aspect here when it comes to overall high vibe nutrition, all right, that starts with the sugar cycle in us and literally ends in addictive behaviors. And that has to do with, how these the contaminants on what level of our system they work. There's also things that are energetically toxic. All right, when it comes to say movies or visuals, you can imagine that something like a super gory horror movie, is maybe not something that you want, because you can feel that this is not good for your energy. But when it comes to food, so many people don't actually feel this well, and sugar plays into this. So there's a way to mask certain things in foods with sugar, so that we have sort of like a happy kind of response with it, because there's a lot of sugar in it. But really all that does is to help us past the actual sort of toxic effect of it. But to keep this whole sugar discussion short, the refined sugars that we find in our supermarkets, and especially the high fructose corn syrup, which is a sort of a super sugar, all right, is a chemically distilled, even more potent sugar. Okay, what this does is that it literally messes with our nerves, and this messing with our nerves, okay, is what creates or can create a lot of emotional and mental and also energetic issues. And the way it does that is by overstimulating our nervous system. And so many of our physical and emotional and also mental conditions have to do with our system being worn out. Okay, and so when I talked about compounding things adding up, it's very important to take a look at the overall state or stress level of our system. And sugar is one of those things that affects our stress levels directly. Okay, so questions that we had here just an hour ago were about artificial sweeteners, and were about different qualities of sugars. And I was asked, whether you should cook and bake with sugars, and my answer was that I have to look at, some of the recipes, okay? So when you want something to taste sweet, and you want it, we all have family situations, Thanksgiving has come up, and Christmas and so forth, where a sweet taste, comes kind of with these holidays, and there's nothing wrong with this. It's just the amounts and the quality of it, all right? So when it comes to baking and cooking, I recommend that you use the unprocessed or unrefined versions of things. So like, say, for instance, raw cane sugar, or coconut sugar, or rice sugar. Those are sugars that have a lower glycemic index, and therefore don't work as stressful on your neurological system, on your neurotransmitters. Okay, they release sort of the sugar effect over a longer period of time, and are therefore more balanced for you. Sugar alternatives, such as honey, of course, the agave syrup being one of them. There's so many other ones out there now, coconut products and so forth, that can help you with this. But I do want to point out, though, that there are recipes. I'm a big promoter of cooking your food and baking. The things that you like yourself. Sometimes you can't replace the sugar, because it also plays into the texture and sort of how it turns out in the end and so forth. Just use fewer amounts. One of the big things is about sugar and our taste buds is that you can actually wean yourself off from having this need for this super sweet stuff. This was another thing that I noticed moving here from Europe, that everything in the States seems to be more sweet and more salty and more spicy. And this has to do with conditioning. So you can uncondition yourself from it and literally sort of reteach your body to different sensitivities in regards to sweetness or saltiness. It's really just by this ingestion of processed foods where you're not in control of that makes your system get used to certain levels of sweet. And that's something that you can curb down, okay, even with your kids. All right. The only problem is that if you let them have those processed foods and packaged candy and so forth, then they are so used to these levels of sweetness that they will continue to crave and to ask for them. So if you have been using products with a lot of refined sugar, then don't expect a transition here, a change to a diet with a less refined sugar to go easy. Okay, you have to do this in increments, and you have to slowly change the taste buds of your family. Okay, so the same with yourself. But when it comes to like a balanced and harmonious diet, I truly want to remind everybody that if you have favorite foods, then don't deprive yourself of favorite foods. Yes, experiment, explore. If you can use if you can exchange some things with healthier versions. That is how I actually got to cook and bake a lot. I wanted to have the things that I like, but I wanted to control the ingredients. And so over the years, over the decades, I developed ways to make them that are simply healthier for myself and for my family, and it's still tasting really good. I'm a big promoter of not depriving yourself of the things that you really like. Okay, there is always a little bit of dopamine involved in eating. That there's nothing we can do about this. So I don't recommend to live like a monk and take all the joy out of eating, because I believe that that's a really important part of foods, not just for ourselves, but also since foods are often connected with social and other kind of activities. All right, I don't think it's needed that you have to be hyper vigilant about your sugar intake in terms of counting the grams of sugar. I'd much rather have you develop a feeling for what is sweet and sweet enough and what is too sweet. Okay. Principle number 5 then leads you to recognizing that it's actually more a matter of quality rather than quantity. So the reason why so many of you are getting stuck in calorie counting and size portion control is because you don't understand how important the quality is. So anyone who's changed from cheap stuff to more expensive, or it's not necessarily price, but it's like from low nutrient to high nutrient content, will notice that you need a lot less. So all of you out there that have a sweet tooth and that love chocolate or other specific kinds of taste, all right, my suggestion to you is not to give up, but to choose the most expensive, most exquisite chocolate that is out there with a high cocoa content, and you go with it and you have less than you would normally have, but you really eat it in a conscious way and enjoy every single bite. All right, this is what it means to align yourself to quality rather than quantity. The reason why we have cravings for these family size type of amounts of foods is because there's no nourishment in it, and therefore our system stays unsatisfied and keeps asking for more. If you have a nutritious meal with lots of raw fruits and vegetables mixed in or on the side as a salad, as the provider for enzymes and so forth for you, and some warm aspects of it, soups and so forth, then you notice that you'll eat less. Okay, and one question that came here in conjunction with the raw fruits and vegetables that I mentioned earlier was, whether we should have warm or cold foods. I'm not a big promoter of cold foods. Energetically, this doesn't metabolize that well. So sometimes you need a little warmth from the outside. Okay. The recommendation for raw is not as in 100%, but as in adding this to your diet, all right? Because that's where a lot of the stuff, the good stuff, is in that can up your energy. Okay, so the bottom line here of some of the fundamentals that we talked about is the more processed foods you eat, the lower your energy is going to be. Okay, regardless of what you think and regardless how expensive it is. Okay, processed foods don't have much nourishment in them and therefore aren't as nutritious. And that is what keeps you deficient all the time, all right? And it will also lower your energy. And not to mention then the bad choices that we make, if we're in a constant state of craving and so forth, this is when we do the binge eating. This is when we grab for the bag of chips and, the gallon of ice cream and feel bad about it afterwards. So instead of, doing these cycles, of where you're trying to eat really good and then you can't hold it anymore and you have to have your binge day or whatever, and then you go into guilt and pain again and try to work it off again, which is extremely exhausting from an energetic point of view. It is much better to find a diet that keeps you in a natural balance, where you never feel deprived, where you never feel cravings, where you feel satisfied quickly. Okay, those are indications for for good high vibe food. But of course, there's some more aspects to this, and that leads me here to the principle number 6, and that is the meat consumption. Okay, I'm not promoting veganism nor vegetarianism, but I do want to share with you that every person that I know that is energetically sensitive and that has worked on, their vibes, and tries to keep them in a high vibe level, actually gravitates away from meat. And why is that? Some of that has to do actually with the way meat is being produced. I don't want to go into the visuals of this here, but I do want to remind everybody that the way the meat is being produced happens nowadays with a lot of cruelty, torture, trauma, pain, and so forth. So there is not a lot of love in that. How our livestock is being raised and slaughtered, and therefore the meat that you eat actually contains these energies. All right, so everything that this animal experiences stores energetically in their cells. And as you eat it, you're eating some of that anxiety, some of that trauma with. So reducing meat consumption for someone who has a lot of anxiety or depression can actually already help. All right. Now, everyone who is energetically sensitive also feels not really good when eating too much meat. So you'll find that there is even if you don't want to be a vegetarian, which is totally fine, you feel like that you want to eat less meat. Okay, that's something that I would really leave up to your own discretion. Okay, and observe, your relationship with meat. But please remember that they are highly processed, and unless you raise the cow or the pig and were involved in the whole entire process or life of this animal, and even the meat preparation, the slaughtering and so forth, you are ingesting a highly processed product there. There's a lot of controversy about this, and I really don't want to go into the discussion about whether you should eat meat or not. I don't eat meat. I never liked meat, not even as a child. And, most people that I work with, they don't eat meat, okay? Or, not as in like sort of categorically, but as in like they just don't want meat. I eat fish because I don't feel the same way when I eat fish than when I eat meat, although I honestly I don't have much experience. I never actually ate meat, so I can't really tell you much about this. But as far as some things is concerned, you have to feel this out. You have to really trust in your energy system. If you feel completely exhausted and tired after you ate a dish with a lot of meat and not so many vegetables and fruits in there, then it may have something to do with the composition of your meal. Yes. Deb is commenting here that a medical medium can be an excellent guide for health and natural treatments. Of course, this is a bit off topic here, but in regards to like actually finding out what works for you, I would much rather empower or encourage everybody to feel into their own feeling with their body and with the foods, and of course also the people, the places, the jobs, the activities, the behaviors, and the choices that you make in your life to really develop a better sense of what is good for you, what is nourishing, and what is supportive for you, than to run to healers or mediums and so forth. Now, I'm a healer myself, but this is something that I teach my clients so that they can actually feel empowered to make those kind of choices that they have to make every day themselves. Okay, when it comes to like what are additional things that can help our body, that we could look at as nutrition as well. Principle number 8 is basically use anything that supports you, and there's a lot of things that can support you: essential oil, essences, herbs, herbal teas, but also crystals, whatever works for you. Okay, is something that I would strongly recommend you guys to explore and discover. All right, it's not so much what's right and wrong. It's important that you find what works for you. As far as like medical remedies is concerned, there is no doubt about the property, the healing property of plants, and we also talked about this on Instagram earlier, why it's so important to look at the quality of fruits and vegetables, and that you want to eat seasonal and organic and local, because plants around you in the area where you live, they have a specific composition of nutrients that are needed for our systems to heal or to regenerate from some of the environmental challenges that come through living in this climate or area and so forth. So like say we're, in high altitude where you have a lot of respiratory problems, you have lots of mullein and lots of sage, okay, that help your respiratory system. In climates where you have a lot of infections, skin infections and so forth, you have a lot of chamomile that grows there. In other areas where you have upper respiratory infections, you have a lot of ivy that grows there, or mint. Do you know what I mean? For these things, you may need a specialist that can educate you on what is the right herb or the right essential oil, or the right color that I need to work with here if you have a problem. But if you look at it from a high vibratory standpoint, what you want to provide to yourself on a daily basis that can support you, not from a remedy standpoint but from a high vibe standpoint, okay, I would strongly recommend to really feel into your body and always focus on the question, what do I need right now? Or what do I don't want to feel right now? Okay, this can also be part of, your choices. So when you find yourself in sort of recurring, making bad choices, then you need to look at what's underneath that. Okay, you can't just take out the emotional aspect or the mental aspect. Okay, so looking at your diet is just one aspect of it. Okay. Principle number 8 is taking if you want to take supplements, which unfortunately has become somewhat of a necessity here. I'm not promoting supplements, but I think that looking at the statistics that clearly show that the nutrient level of our foods has sunk in the last 30 years. So since the 80s, 90s, the nutrient content of our foods is down to 20% to what it was before. Okay, and even in naturally grown fruits and vegetables. This means that the amounts of nutrient-dense foods that we need to eat nowadays, in order to just get the minimum, is often not feasible. Not even counting in, the time that it takes to collect them, to get them, to prepare them. So a lot of people have these really hectic and fast-paced lives that does not allow them to spend that much time with foods, and therefore gravitate to its supplements. When it comes to supplements, it's very simple. I studied this, and I made public lectures 30 years ago about why you shouldn't be taking any supplements, at least not if they're produced pharmaceutical grade, because they are basically singling out components that come in a natural composition here, like I said earlier, with 10,000 other chemicals that, in their natural form. And then when you single them out, then they become more like a chemical, and at that point your body doesn't actually know what to do with this. So most of the pharmaceutical grade supplements require you to overdose, and then this overdosage actually does more harm than good. The only supplements that really work and that are recommendable from an energetic as well as physiological standpoint are whole food based supplements, and some of these companies that have perfected this, and I'll say it out open here, I'm a big fan of Juice Plus. For over 26 years, Juice Plus has provided a whole range of whole-based supplements that is extremely efficient. So for all of you guys out there that are looking for things, or for those of you who have come in contact with Juice Plus, yes, it's distributed through network marketing, so something that not everybody likes, but I can really vouch for the way they make it there, and the product itself. So that is definitely a go. All right. Health food stores have now other whole food based supplements that function on the same basis, which is sort of a concentrate, to concentrate nature's power, not by isolating it, by literally sort of drying it up or shredding it up, and condensing it, taking the water out, taking the some of the macronutrients out, and so forth. They're good as well. They are not as comprehensive, but it's definitely something to look at. As empaths, as energetically sensitives, guys, as an observation that I've made, and some other psychologists, there's still relatively new research, namely chronic magnesium deficiency. That is something that I want to mention just real brief here, guys. If you want to lessen some of the sort of empathetic overlay that you have, and some of the stress that comes from it, and also some of these ascension pains that we have discussed here a few Sundays ago. If you haven't watched this video, just click on it on the YouTube channel. Then you may want to check your blood levels a little bit, and the mineral content here. So a reason why nuts and seeds and certain oils are good for you, or better for you, and provide you with more high vibe energies than processed foods, is also because you need more things. So it appears that energetically sensitive people require more magnesium, probably also more calcium, and that is why we respond to almond products and green leafy vegetables and so forth, rice, gluten-free stuff and so forth, better than other things. Okay, if you want to take magnesium and calcium supplements, make sure that you take them in. They are also available as a whole food based, and make sure that you're not actually treating them like a medication. You want to really maybe Google magnesium rich foods, and then come up with your own ways of shifting your diet into something that provides you with higher vibes. That's what I would like to encourage you to do. instead of just looking at it sort of as a technical thing. Okay. Principle number 9 is aligning yourself to your food and eating, the eating process and also the preparation. It is a social event, guys. Did you know that the most viewed YouTube videos worldwide by far are YouTube videos that just show other people eating? Okay, if you look at the Facebook or Instagram or whatever, the most pictures that you see is people taking a photo of their food or whom they're eating it with or where they're eating it, guys. There's something very, very sacred about eating, and if you want your food to work more for you, then you need to align to it, and this starts with the selection process in the store. Ideally, you would align to the food that you eat through growing it yourself. Guys, if you knew the magic of plants extends into a bioenergetic realm that most of you have no clue about. If you, align to a plant, the plant will actually produce nutrients based on your DNA. And this is a whole topic on itself. But, this sacred power here of plants, okay, and everything in nature is not even a bit explored. I mean, well, you've seen through all the different careers that I've gone, that the more I knew, the more spiritual I became. So I started out scientifically, and I'm now, at a place where I'm bringing all this together, and I'm recognizing that, the energy awareness and consciousness development is a science as well. It's a meta science. It brings all the other sciences together. You can't just single out the different things. So when it comes to taking out the best out of your foods and making it a high vibe event, okay, you really, really want to spend some time with food and not just see it as a necessity. Eating on the go and stuff like that, they desanctify food. Okay, there's a reason why some cultures say grace with food. It doesn't just, thank, the divinity or whatever, what is behind, what produced or created the food. It's also about blessing the food. Blessing your food ups the energy of your food significantly. Okay, preparing a beautiful table with every meal ups the vibes of your food significantly. All right, so don't underestimate these things. It's very, very important when it comes to high vibe nutrition. And, then, of course, principle number 10 is how can we get rid of some of the residues that we can't, avoid? Well, we do regular detox. So you can also use foods for detoxing. Okay, some days you will feel like, you don't feel like, heavy foods. You feel like lighter foods. You may want to pick foods that are more sort of that are supporting the excretion of things. And in a few weeks from now, I'll offer here a free community event that we do once or twice a year, and that is a light fast with just juices and broths. This is a very, very good opportunity for you to detox before Christmas. During the winter solstice, I'm really looking forward to this event. Where you'll see the guidelines of that publicly in the forum or on the transCODES website, so you can all participate in this. But regularly detoxing, is something that needs to be part of your lifestyle choices, not just in regards to foods, to your body, also to other things, which then leads to the principle number 11, and that is to really heed your fundamental needs. So when it comes to the digestion and metabolizing of energy, it's also important that you sleep enough. Okay, so there's a neurotransmitter reasons or metabolic reasons for that. The same with exercise, moderate exercise, consistent exercise, but as well as mindfulness, meditating, self-contemplation, calm and rest, can lead to a more balanced and improved digestion and the metabolizing of your foods, as well as your overall energy. So this is basically the principle of self-clearing, you know, where you recognize that your body has certain times, certain needs at certain times. And that's why, you know, if you you know, only eat superfoods, you know, if you don't sleep enough, you know, it can't be metabolized correctly, or if you don't drink enough water with it, you know, and all these things. So they all play into another. And last but not least, principle number 12 is to practice self-love and self-care with all of your foods and thoughts and eating and sentiments and actions and things that you engage in on all levels. Those are the fundamental principles of high vibe nutrition. They're not even the intricacies. Next Sunday, I would like to talk to you about you know, timing, pacing, balance, and so forth. But today, I really wanted to cover just the grounds here. And if you would like to get a transcript of this video and all the recommendations that I have for you in details, then please sign up for the newsletter here for my email list. And then later, this will also be published on my blog. You know, subscribe to the YouTube channel, where I publish all kinds of other concepts for energetically sensitive people. You know, integrating energies into our daily lives without you know, making it too special or too woo-woo. Okay. So this concludes here my sort of lecture on high vibe nutrition. I'd love to see a few more questions from you guys. I'm not sure if I'm... yes, I am. So I hope that this was useful for you. If you have questions in regards to this truth talk, then please put them into the comments for this video, and then I'll pick them up for the second part next Sunday. Okay, I hope that I can get all the technical issues here with the multicasting, the simulcasting sorted out by then. If not, I have to just focus on one platform, I think. But yes, please write your questions into the comments here. Also, let me know about things that you would like me to cover next Sunday, 12 p.m. Eastern US time, second part of this Truth Talk about high vibe nutrition. I hope that this was useful for you. Thank you so much for sending me hearts. Check out my Patreon channel as well if you want more information. Thank you, Sandy. I see you. Bye bye, everyone. See you next week.